you plan to do with your one wild and precious life. So this is really our theme, isn't it? What do we really want to do? Yeah, the chanda there. You know, what do we actually decide then to do? You know, we might want to do all sorts of things, but do we actually decide and do them and keep going with things? Do we remember that we decided to do them? Or how easy is it to forget? Very easy in my case. You know, we can be so distracted, can't we, and sort of perhaps flit off onto all sorts of other bright ideas or interests. And there's so many distractions available to us. So yeah, we need that, don't we? We need smrti. We need to be able to remember. And then we really need to settle down and really focus and really, really deepen our awareness of what it is we're trying to do. And then I'm going to go on tonight to this last one, which is prajna. Prajna's translated as, well, it says here, think, but actually I don't think that's terribly useful. I've written mind-heart up there to remind me that it's not about intellectual thinking, actually. It's not about really, you know, sort of learning things. It translates as wisdom, prajna. But it's really what we need to focus on is we're going towards what sort of wisdom? You know, what is the wisdom that we want to cultivate? What is the wisdom that we want to actually realise? You know, what is it we want to find out? I mean, we're not trying to find out the wisdom of how to throw a marvellous pot or cook a tasty meal, are we? We're looking for something else. That's why you're all here, isn't it? I mean, if you wanted to learn to throw a pot, you'd have gone to a pottery evening, but you're here, aren't you? And you're looking for something else, I bet. I certainly am anyway. And so this area of prajna, wisdom, we're going to be looking into unpacking that a little bit tonight. But I'd like to just read something else poetic. And I'm doing this really because I suppose what I'm wanting to do is to introduce myself to you as to who I am and what it is that keeps me going or helps me to live out my values, live out my deepest heart wishes, if you like, my deepest longings. And poetry is something that really helps me to do that, because it takes me away from a kind of heady sort of thinking into something actually more mythical, I suppose, if you like, imaginative and so on. And it's something I really value in my life. And this is called There's a Thread You Follow. Actually, I don't think that's the title, but it's the first line. It's a poem by William Stafford. It's quite short. There's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you are pursuing. You have to explain about the thread, but it is hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen. People get hurt or die, and you suffer and get old. Nothing you can do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread. And that, for me, says quite a lot about what it is we're trying to explore here. So, yes, just introduce myself with that. But I'll also say I'm Kamalamati. for those of you who don't know me. I was ordained in 2017, and I was given the name Kamalamati, which means lotus, mind, heart. And it was given to me by my lovely preceptor, Sadahadaya. She said that she chose it for me partly as a mindfulness practice. So I really see it as tapping into this list here, this sort of what do I really want to do? And I've got this name now that really reminds me all the time. It's such a brilliant mindfulness gift that she gave me because I'm carrying it with me now all the time. It helps me to sort of keep a kind of constant focus, I suppose, on my intended path. Which is to grow and to blossom like a lotus and open and fulfill my greatest potential, if you like. And it's not just for the benefit of myself that I want to grow and open and blossom. I want to be of help to others as well. And so I'm sort of, I suppose you could say, see myself as a sort of bodhisattva in training, you know, wanting to open more and more and help more and more beings to for their suffering to reduce. Getting ordained and having a name like this, you know, really is a very, very mythical way, I suppose, of how I can develop ways of, it's an example, this changing my name. I mean, you can't do anything much more radical than changing your name, can you? As a sort of practice to keep you on your path, really. And actually, what I did when I was preparing this talk was I actually produced, where is it? Oh, here. Yeah, I've done a few copies of this and left them at the back there near the steps if any of you'd like to grab one and just have a look on your way out. But I kind of wrote down a whole toolkit, I've called it Kamalamati's toolkit here, of all sorts of ways in which I kind of employ these vignetas, if you like, vignetas, sorry, Arta Siddhi telling me how to pronounce it. Anyway, how do I employ these ways of living out my values? And I wrote down a whole load of things. I'm not going to read them out, obviously, but do have a look if you want to take one. There's so many different ways in which I can practice and, work towards living out my values. I mean, I've been practicing now for about 14, well, more or less exactly 14 years. And I thoroughly recommend it, actually, especially for any of you younger people that are just starting out on your path of practice. It definitely, has transformed my own life. I'm much happier, I'm much more focused. I feel I have a purpose and I know where I want to try and go, if you like, in my life. So even though I'm pretty old, I was quite old when I came to it, and I'm even older now, of course. But, it's never too late to practice. It's never too late to make progress on this path. But it's not always easy to sustain the practice, and like almost everyone I know, and Arthur Siddhi was saying earlier, wasn't he? We do experience times when our energy diminishes, perhaps our interest even diminishes, and inspiration feels a bit hard to come by, and we start to wonder, why am I doing this? We get distracted by all the sort of mundane pleasures and distractions in life. I can kind of forget my purpose. So that's really why I suppose it's really good to, if you like, for yourselves to kind of compile a sort of toolkit. We were talking about this in our group last week, Vicky, weren't we? You know, what a marvellous treasure trove of tools and, if you like to think of it as that, we have in the Dharma. You know, so much that we can tap into to rekindle our inspiration and so on, and we can, gather together in the community, in the Sangha. I mean, going on retreat's a fantastic way, of course, probably the best way that you can choose to re-spark your interest if you have kind of, gone a bit dry or something. But anyway, so tonight, we're going to continue with our exploration of this list, and particularly my job is to focus on prajna, this one, wisdom, and it's a really difficult thing to do. Thanks, Kamalamati, for giving it to poor Kamalamati. So if we're going to develop these, if we're going to cultivate these steps, we need to really think. That's why think is up there, I reckon. We really need to sort of apply ourselves, I suppose, that's what it's talking about. But it's, what do we mean by wisdom? What is this wisdom that we're trying to attain, if you like, or trying to move towards? Well, what we need to do, I suppose, is to really sort of, focus on and consider and contemplate, reflect a lot on what do we really want to do? What are our deepest values? And then we do need to really apply ourselves to how we're going to do that. What are we going to actually do? It's a path of doing. It's not about reading books about it and sort of, learning about it. It's about actually practicing and doing the things that are going to take us forward. And also keep remembering why we're doing it. So important. And so, if we decide that we are going to pursue this spiritual life, and really try to live out our deepest values and our heart longings. What it's going to do is it's going to take the practice of patience. We're going to need patience, we're going to need to keep at it, keep going, keep coming back to it. And that's one thing, a sort of perfection of wisdom, if you like, that I'm going to focus on tonight. So I'll just introduce to you a list of perfections of wisdom. The 6 prajna paramitas. So this is how they're translated, as perfections of wisdom and or virtues. They're translated as sometimes. And here are the 6. So we've got generosity comes first, translated as dana, or it's dana and it's translated as generosity, if you like. We have shila here, which is ethics or morality. And then we have this third one, which I'm going to focus on tonight, kshanti. So kshanti is forbearance or patience. I'm going to be, as I say, going into that more tonight. And then we've got virya, which is vigour or energy. We've got samadhi, which is meditative absorption. And then finally, we come back to wisdom here, but really this is transcendental wisdom, if you like. I'll talk a little bit about that. And we're going to have these 4, 5 and 6, we are going to have evenings on those coming up in the series. So, that's our list of the 6 perfections of wisdom, which we sort of are going to be exploring. Okay. So yeah, fortunately in the Buddhist teachings, of course, there's plenty of wisdom that we can benefit from in all sorts, takes all sorts of forms. And what we have to do is to find out our own way with this. We need to sort of really get to know ourselves and learn what it is that's going to be taking us forward. It's a very much of a sort of personal invitation to grow and transform and live out our values. It's not something that's a sort of one-size-fits-all or anything like that. So it does take quite a lot of effort and application, for us to really find out how to prioritise our time and our energy. How to persuade and encourage our sort of highly distractible minds, and be kind when we do go off, perhaps like a sort of excitable, think of a sort of excitable, playful puppy that kind of goes running off, and we need to be kind and bring it back. It's no good sort of beating it or anything like that. It's just going to run away even more, isn't it, and not come back. And if our minds are more like a kind of, I was thinking of like a sleepy koala, up in a tree, sort of dreaming the day away and the night as well, maybe. We might be more, our minds might be a bit more like that, sort of tending towards sluggishness or, sleepiness. Again, we wouldn't go and kind of shake the koala out the tree, would we? It wouldn't be very kind. We'd perhaps gently, go and gently wake it up and see if we can get it enlivened a bit. So find out what works for you and what doesn't, and be sensitive, about it. So all this comes into this practice of wisdom, sort of in everyday kind of ways. We need to develop this kind of wisdom, awareness and sensitivity and understanding of ourselves and of what's going on around us and the conditions that we're in. And remembering as well that it isn't intellectual wisdom. I think that's what you were saying earlier, wasn't it, Arta Siddhi? We're not talking about needing to be super bright and read all the books and remember all the lists and kind of be able to kind of, pass exams in Buddhism or something. It's very much a practical, lived experience. It's your direct experience that you're looking to have and to see and understand with the whole of yourself, with your mind, with your intellectual intelligence, but also with your heart. That the mind-heart together. There's no separation of them in Buddhism, actually. And what is really then this transcendental wisdom that I was talking about, that I've mentioned? Well, I'm a bit loath to try and go into it, and I'm not even going to try and go into it in any great depth. But essentially what we're talking about is gaining insight and understanding and seeing directly the true nature of things. What is reality? And what we know then is that actually what we do, all of us, is that we kind of struggle under a kind of very basic delusion. And the delusion that we struggle under is that we see ourselves, we see the world, we see everything actually as permanent and as fixed and as separate. We see things as separate and we don't see things. I know I'm teaching some of you to suck eggs here, you know all this, but for anyone who's a bit newer, this is the fundamental delusion that we're all struggling under. And what we need to do, what we must try to do, is to recognise that, things aren't separate, solid, permanent, and separately existing. And also they're not ultimately capable, none of the things that we see and experience, none of it is capable of actually bringing us lasting happiness and satisfaction. And that's what we've got to see through. Because what we do by, sort of labouring under that delusion is that we just bring ourselves continuous suffering, unhappiness, because it kind of just doesn't work. And we don't therefore have, we just keep struggling. We keep going round and round in circles, trying again and again to kind of make it all work for us, because we're seeing it wrongly. And what we need to do is to see through that. But it's because it's a very, very difficult thing to do. It's very profound. And it's very hard to explain, so I'm probably not making a very good job of it here. But actually, we are going to have an evening on it towards the end of the series. I think Kalyana Dee's in the frame for doing that, so I'll leave that to her, and I'm sure she'll make a much better job of it than I could. But it's a very, very, this is a very, very important aspect of what it is we really, need to be going towards if we're going to be really living out these heart longings we have for happiness, for satisfaction, for being able to be in the world with love and with compassion. Anyway, I better look at the time. Oh gosh. Okay, so, and just to say that, as far as this Transcendental Wisdom is concerned, a very good friend of mine, a dear friend, yesterday recommended and pointed me in the direction of the London Buddhist Centre YouTube channel, where Jnana Vacha, who's such a good communicator of the Dharma, has got, I think it's about 20 minutes long, and he's talking about wisdom, this wisdom, and it's very, very good. So I would recommend, if if your appetite's whetted and you want to go and have a listen, it's really, really worth it. Okay, anyhow, we're going to go back now to these number 3, 1, 2 and 3, and particularly want some time for focusing on number 3. But generosity and ethics are really vital, things to be cultivating. And in the Bodhicaryavatara, Shantideva does deal with both of these. And one thing he says about them, I'll try to make it fairly quick. What he underlines most strongly about generosity and ethics is that it's centrally important to protect the mind, our mind in regard to these things. That's what it is we need to be doing. I'm not going to say any more because I shall run out of time. Because it's time I really moved on to my, my set piece here, which is what I was asked to talk about. I've been talking about all sorts of other things instead. But it all leads in, really. It all goes along. And what I'm going to focus on now is this kshanti. And actually, when I started to look at what Shantideva says, he devotes the whole of chapter 6 to this perfection. And when I started to look at what he says about it, my interest, my chanda, was really piqued strongly, because it seemed to really speak a lot to my own experience. Because what he says is, he approaches kshanti, forbearance, patience, from three aspects, really. He talks about forbearance towards being able to endure suffering. So that could be, suffering, particularly perhaps of bodily suffering, the kind of suffering and pain and difficulties that we all encounter in our daily lives. And then he also talks about having forbearance and patience with in our reflections on the teachings. And then finally, the one that really speaks to me and probably to many of us, forbearance and patience, and the way he puts it's put is of the endurance of injuries from others. So in other words, annoying other people. The way that we're all annoyed by, aren't we, or we're impatient with so often and find it really hard to bear with other people. But what Shantideva says about all of these aspects of forbearance is that it's all about how do we cope with our anger, our ill will, and even our hatred. And why should we avoid it? And he's very, very strong on this. He says we must avoid anger at all costs. So what he says is, I'm going to quote him here, he says, all the good done so far through generosity and ethical actions can be destroyed by anger. There's no evil equal to anger and hatred. It's the worst. I'm sort of paraphrasing this, it's not exactly quoting him. But he says, and there's no spiritual practice equal to forbearance. It's the best. Okay. And he says, one's mind finds no peace, neither enjoys pleasure or delight, nor goes to sleep, nor feels secure, while the dart of hatred is stuck in the heart. It's quite strong stuff, isn't it? I'm going to read it again. I'll just invite you to close your eyes and listen, and then I'll just leave a little pause and let you just reflect for yourself on these words. So just relax and close your eyes. All the good done so far through generosity and ethical actions can be destroyed by anger. There's no evil equal to anger and hatred. It's the worst. And there's no spiritual practice equal to forbearance. It's the best. One's mind finds no peace, neither enjoys pleasure or delight, nor goes to sleep, nor feels secure, while the dart of hatred is stuck in the heart. So when we go into groups, that's a question, that's a bit of text that I'd invite you to reflect on and share with each other your thoughts. And do you agree with that, or perhaps you've got some other thoughts about it? And then when just going back to these aspects of forbearance that Shantideva talks about in the Bodhicaryavatara, forbearance towards the endurance of suffering and forbearance as a result of reflecting on the teaching. What he emphasises in those is that it's about conditionality, actually. Everything happens on account of, dependent on conditions. Things arise because of conditions, and when those conditions cease, things cease, and so on. And this very fundamental teaching, the most central teaching in a lot of ways, isn't it, in Buddhism? And Shantideva uses this understanding and this wisdom to bring to this area of forbearance, because he says, it's not actually the fault of anyone else, really, and people don't choose to become angry, do they? And so on. It's all part of conditions that arise, and people don't, pain and suffering doesn't we can't blame it. And so why get angry with it? Why be angry with it? And if we can understand that it's because of conditionality, everything's because of this conditionality, then we're more able to understand and cope with perhaps the provocative behaviour of other people, and the unpleasant and aggressive behaviour even, and so on, of other people. I mean, how often have we said things along the lines of hell is other people, or if it wasn't for the kids, everything would be lovely, or something like that. If it wasn't for the customers, I'd really like my job, that kind of thing. And particularly, of course, the family, you can't choose your family, can you? Aren't they so annoying? Or something like that. And we can also, can't we, really easily fall into righteous indignation. These are all aspects of anger, aren't they, and annoyance, where we sort of, I'd never do that, and, oh dear, how could they, and all of this sort of thing. And then there's the desire for retaliation and revenge, we've got to get back at when someone's upset us or hurt us or something like that. And Shantideva is very, very strong on this. He wants us to deny even any of those sorts of things, even a toehold, in our minds. He says, anger in any of its forms undermines the Bodhisattva's goal of saving all beings. And it alienates us, actually, from the very beings that we've undertaken to save. So, it just doesn't make sense, does it, to sort of allow this anger to come in. Yeah. Okay. I was very struck, as I said, by all of this, by the way that Shantideva really focuses on anger around this forbearance and trying to eliminate anger from our minds and from our hearts. And I think I was so struck because I would very vividly recall the very first meditation class I ever went to. And it was a day, actually. It was a day on the learning the metta bhavana practice, the cultivation of loving kindness. And it had such a strong effect on me because what I realised was, in fact, we were sent off into small groups to ask what it was we were hoping to get from the day. And my answer was, I wanted to do something about my anger. I was so angry at that point in my life. It's like everything. I was coming up for 60. I was retiring from work. My whole life seemed to have fallen to bits, actually. I'd just broken up from a 25-year relationship that I'd tried really hard to make work. My son had just left home, so I couldn't be mum anymore, really. My sister was very, very ill after years of ill health, and in fact she died a very few months afterwards. And also, all the kind of efforts I'd made towards like saving the world. You know, I'd been a teacher and a youth worker, and I'd always thought, you know, I can save the world single-handed, actually. I mean, goodness me, how humiliating. But, you know, no, I really think that I'd had these dreams. You know, I'd grown up in the 1960s, for goodness sake. You know, everything was getting better. We were all going to, you know, love was going to find a way and all the rest of it. You know, we're going to teach the world to sing, you know, all that. Oh, that was a Coca-Cola advert, wasn't it? Anyway, you know, but actually I was so angry then because none of this had worked. It would all seem to have crumbled away, and there I was, you know. And I just was so angry. I mean, after all, you know, I was essentially a good person. I was a kind, hard-working, responsible citizen and all of this sort of thing. And I expected to be safe and to be happy and to be able to sort of live happily ever after, you know. You know, and have all these lovely benign conditions of a nice middle-class woman. So, you know, what had gone wrong, for goodness sake? And who's to blame, you know? Heads must roll, as my friend David would say. Yeah, crikey. So, anyway, I started doing the Metta Bhavana practice and mindfulness meditation. And of course, I very soon became completely, you know, disabused of all these views that I was holding and all this attitude I'd got about, you know, how it was all them out there and it was all wrong, and I was, you know, no, I was right to be, you know, I had every right to be angry about it all. Oh, goodness me. Yeah. So fortunately, yes, I found the Tree Ratana community, and, you know, I was able to start coming to classes. I was able to really change the conditions of my life, and I was able to start to grow and change. And then, you know, 8 years later, I became Kamalamati. So who'd have thought? Anyhow, yeah, but of course it didn't eradicate all the anger. The anger was still, you know, there potentially, able to rise up. And in particular, forgive me if you've heard this story, some of my friends will have heard it before, but, you know, I particularly found this anger would rise up in relation to my brother. I've got this younger brother, very, very difficult. He's so angry, he's so disillusioned, he's so unhappy and disappointed with the world and his life that he just acts it out in very aggressive and very, very hate-filled ways, actually. And I just found this so, so difficult. And so I really, you know, I really had to bring all my practice and my growing practice to bear on this relationship. I had to, you know, I've been gradually learning to control my own hot temper, you know, stop blaming others, see my own faults and failings, and also learn to apologise, you know, and learn to forgive both myself and him and everybody else, you know, and forgive the world for being what it's like. So, I was very, very fortunate, really, I think, to have my practice, because it's actually transformed my relationship with my brother. And I'm so much, I just feel such a lot of relief and gladness, you know, that I've been able to do that. I've been able to stay in relationship with him. And he's benefiting too. That's what's so marvellous, you know, that even though he hasn't sort of been practicing and working on his relationship to his anger and his ill will and so on, he's gosh, I'm a bit conscious that I'm running out of time. He is happier in relation to me, and he's pleased that we are in good communication. I mean, it doesn't mean that it doesn't still rise up. I mean, I have to confess to you that, even just a couple of years ago, I did find myself screaming at him one day. I shouldn't be laughing, but this is just what happens. And so forgive yourselves if you're trying this sort of practice, because, I have to try and forgive myself for lapsing, if you like. And, I was throwing his stuff out of the boot of the car and driving off, screaming down the road in the car, It's shocking. I thought I'd got over all of that sort of thing. But what I did do was I remembered very quickly, before I'd got to the end of the road, I remembered and I realised what I was doing. And I turned back, I went back, and with my heart in my mouth rather, because I thought I was going to get blasted, but I apologised, and we actually came back into harmony and reconciled. So it was really good. Hooray! And I'm sure our relationship will always have challenges, but it is in far better shape than it's ever been. And I do see my brother Paul as my best teacher, actually. It's so interesting because, most difficult, but the best teacher. Because in fact, actually, when I really look at it, he's a mirror for me, isn't he? Because given the different conditions that we've grown up with and experienced, we're very different, but we're actually the same, if that makes sense. But actually the journey I've been on with him, the reason I'm sort of going on about it so much, I suppose, is because he is that is my best evidence that anger never helps. And it's patient forbearance that is the best medicine for healing all that pain. So I'm going to stop there. And what I'd like to do is offer you the chance to go into groups and reflect on those words of Shantideva that I read earlier. So I don't know who's going to be leading groups. There's another question that I've put here, which is, what's your relationship to anger and forbearance? And do you have any examples yourself of using forbearance or patience to deal with another person? So there's lots to chew on there. Who's going to be leading a